Good evening, I'm Greer McGearey, President of Seahorse Victoria, and with me tonight my guest, Julia Davies, better known as Juls. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Greer.
It's an interesting sort of aspect that I found out about you. You're a PhD candidate. And so what are you a PhD candidate of?
I'm actually doing chemistry, basically. I'm researching materials for triboelectricity, which is actually converting kinetic energy into electrical energy in the sustainability field.
When you were sort of a younger, primary and secondary school, was that sort of an interest for you?
I've always been very interested in science and sustainability, engineering. I think mechanically minded and scientifically minded, analytically minded would be more my forte than English literature or arts, really.
One of the things I've invited you along to have a conversation is about inclusion, because we both belong to an organisation called Toastmasters. And of course, being in the trans world, as it were, that inclusion is a very important part of things. But inclusion is not just about one narrow section of society going into another section. When you were at school and that, did you sort of feel as though you were somebody who was included in everything, or were you sort of pushed to one side?
I never really felt that I was pushed to one side, and I was quite popular at school generally, but definitely the issue of gender labelling came up a lot. And I was born in 67, and still then there were expectations of what the fields that women would go into and the fields that men would go into, and there wasn't a broad spectrum of inclusiveness regarding that issue.
Was there any sort of pressure from home to sort of do the normal girl things, or to follow in the footsteps of maybe your dad or something like that?
I never really had that from home, but people who didn't know me were more likely to find me unusual because I was dreadfully a tomboy, into bikes and skateboards and billy carts and go-karts, and very sporty and mechanically minded. People didn't know me. They found that, I think, a bit intimidating. It's always, I think, if you're not understood, people tend to have a bit of fear around.
So you graduate from secondary school and you pick a university to go and to do a degree. What did you choose initially as a degree to follow? You talked about chemistry. Was it just purely chemistry, or a branch of chemistry that was more important than the other?
Well, that's rather interesting, actually, because straight from high school, I went into RMIT and did an electronics engineering course. Then I got kind of sick of fixing computers from sitting in front of a computer for 6 to 8 hours a day, and decided for a real sea change and became a landscape gardener for about 6 years. Probably had the happiest time of my life, but my father was not impressed and encouraged me to go back to university. I studied health science, did honours in chemistry, and then here I am in my final year of an electrochemistry PhD. So I put the two degrees together, really.
And being a landscape gardener, is that where you really developed a passion for sustainability?
I think I always had that passion. It was more about my lifestyle back then, I think. I would go fishing just about every day, or scuba diving, snorkelling, had a lot of quite crazy mates, actually. And it was more about my lifestyle than, or maybe my mental health sustainability, than really environmental sustainability.
And I mentioned a moment ago about I've known you through Toastmasters and about sort of inclusion. What prompted you to sort of join Toastmasters?
I think realistically I was being proactive towards my degree now at university, being that presenting to my peers and to professors and so forth can be quite daunting. So Toastmasters has been really beneficial to me in that regard, public speaking and the confidence to speak up.
One of the things that I found why I joined Toastmasters was that obviously I was making big changes in my life, and social support, while it was very important, I needed to do something that was sort of, I say, mainstream for want of a better word, to go along and sort of take the challenge to sort of say, well, here I am presenting differently to how everyone knew me. Sort of I found on the very first night I went along that everyone was very supportive. In a sense, that was largely because the structure of what it was about the different aspects of speaking. So everyone's concentrating on what they're doing and not necessarily concentrating on me other than being somebody interested. What did you sort of find those first few nights that you went along to at a Toastmaster meeting?
I was terrified, to tell you the honest truth. I did not know what to expect. But everyone, as you say, was very supportive and very friendly environment, very welcoming. I found it quite easy to relax and get into the groove after a few meetings.
As mentioned right at the beginning, I've been president of a social support group, Seahorse, for many years. And one of the things I've spoken to a lot of people, partially based on my own experience, but listening to many others, is the value of just going along and meeting people face to face and getting involved in activities that you're interested in. Having been involved in service clubs and used to sort of standing up in public, giving a speech or something along that line, to do it totally different was a challenge. And the thing that I really found benefited me was I didn't have to talk about this side of my life. I'm there for the same reason as everyone else. Is that something that sort of you found?
I think everyone firstly joins Toastmasters to improve their public speaking and their confidence in public speaking. And then quite a few of us, I think, reach this stage where something clicks and you realise that to grow yourself, it's about empowering others and learning about working with all sorts of different people. So it's very inclusive.
One of the things that I challenged myself on originally was that because I'd been used to service clubs, I'd only been in the club a few months, and the annual election came around and I ended up took on the most difficult role of being the person looking after the educational standards of the club. But I got involved in judging at competition time, and that took me outside the club environment, because just for benefit is that Toastmasters is a club-based system, so that there's a club here and a club there all around, and our district covers Victoria, South Australia and Tasmania. It was getting out to meet people from other club areas, and also the fact that there's a whole range of ages, there's a whole background of people coming from every corner of the earth who turn up, and they're all there for the same reason, to develop themselves as a person. When you sort of got over that first few meetings, how did you sort of go about developing yourself, that confidence in yourself to stand up and speak and about the subject matters that you love?
Well, this is going to really sound like spruiking for Toastmasters, and I could be an advocate for Toastmasters. Speaking more regularly and being called upon to speak more regularly in public helped my confidence and accelerated that. Now, you mentioned that you were straight into the education side of things, that role as an officer. I too took on very early roles in the leadership side, and I found that helped amazingly with my confidence for public speaking. I think it goes hand in hand. Both the leadership and the public speaking confidence really are in the same path, in my opinion.
One of the big challenges I think all clubs face, or groups like Toastmasters, but even other groups, is how it benefits from the diversity of people that turn up to do the things of, one, learning about speaking, but also learning to accept other people and hearing the stories of other people. How do you sort of see that, particularly also in relation to the fact that you're at uni, you're doing your PhD, you're meeting with a whole range of people who are involved in helping you with your studies, but at the same time you're going to call on those other people as well?
I think we touched on this before. Being that it's such a diverse group, we have to learn to work with such a diverse group that it strengthens us as people. We grow as we... There are still people that I find difficult to manage certain things with. I'm not going to say that I've learnt everything so far. My leadership path is still... I'm still just a baby, but it really is a strength in Toastmasters, the diversity of people that we have there, teaching us to deal with different sorts of people and ourselves.
One of the reasons I sort of asked you to have a bit of a conversation about Toastmasters, not so much to spruik Toastmasters per se, particularly through the social support we've seen in the media and on social media, how different groups, and we're seeing in the AFL how Indigenous footballers have been targeted through hate speech or hate messaging through social media, and the trauma that it causes in the background. And I know just from dealing with social support and different individuals in the trans community, similar sorts of things with what's been in the media of recent times and the protests, and very, very specifically sort of we're anti you as a person, in effect, what it's saying. What I've sort of been trying to encourage people over the years is face-to-face meeting of people helps dissipate that. You touched on that about learning to, one, manage yourself in dealing with other people, is what I'm saying, what you're experiencing.
I think that's very relevant. I think, as I spoke about before, that I really feel that people, if they don't understand others, they can have a fear, but acceptance that we're not all the same is, I think, a lot nicer. And it's more about fear and misunderstanding, I believe, when people aren't accepting of others for being different. And if people could just accept that being different, it really brings strengths, it would be probably beneficial.
I know I've met some individuals even recently about how the just that background noise of perceived hate, perceived denigrating you as an and you sort of tend to think of it as being, it's directed at me. That's why I recommend sort of going, say, joining the Tiddlywinks Club because I like playing Tiddlywinks, or I want to be in the car club because I've got a rare car and I really love and enjoy it. And that's where I find Toastmasters sort of fits into that category. It's something that I've enjoyed doing because I had experience of speaking in public and debating in my younger days, but it allowed me to do that with this side of my life without having to be constantly explaining myself. How would you sort of see it with the way you grew up and all the things that you did? How would you sort of...
I never really felt I had to explain myself. Well, maybe that's incorrect. Sometimes people would challenge me and I'd feel quite offended. Recently, I've never really felt that I've had to explain myself. It's a very interesting part of Toastmasters that you can speak about just about anything you wish to. Just about. Let's face it, you have to be a little careful with the audience and choose your audience wisely. Really do believe it's a very good venting place for certain things, and it takes the power out of certain emotional issues if you actually speak about it and put it out to an audience. So it's kind of counselling in effect at Toastmasters and really about personal growth.
One of the things I have thoroughly enjoyed about Toastmasters is listening to the diverse range of stories, that personal story, the people that come from different countries, and the club that I'm involved in. Over the years, we've had somebody from pretty well every continent except for penguins, but people have been to the Antarctic. But there've people from Europe, from North America, from South America, from Asia, Indigenous people, so it's that diversity. And then listening to their stories, this is how I grew up. And even those who came from religious backgrounds that you were unfamiliar with could talk about their story, but not in a proselytising sense, but in this is the cultural background I came from and this is what it meant to me. Really gives everyone an understanding. And as you said, it takes the wind out of perceptions in some sense.
Well, I really think so. Listening skills in Toastmasters are just as important as speaking skills. Without wishing to spruik Toastmasters too much, I think it's a wonderful platform for everyone.
You're involved at a uni, so are your club a uni-based club?
I have chartered a club at Swinburne University and I'm very proud of it actually. We love it. Yeah. And they're a lovely bunch of people, really supportive. And it's not about really the leadership side so much at Swinburne. It's more about boosting the confidence of students. And students there are very diverse. We get some crazy speeches. It's great, And yes, I enjoy it very much.
The range of diverse individuals at the club, how do you see them from when they first joined and started to be involved to where they are now? What's the most impressive thing?
One student, and without divulging their identity, one student from Sri Lanka actually was sponsored by one of the teachers in Swinburne University, and she has just become the most beautiful speaker, English of a second language, of course, and her voice is just lovely, her manner is just lovely, and it's all happened in basically 1 year. She actually took on a job in the university in what's called the HQ, the HR, helping other students and staff. So she had a lot of exposure to public speaking and dealing with people and so forth, and her manner has just become lovely. She's a really lovely advocate. That sort of thing, it makes me really proud to see.
And I've observed similar things with people in our club, is that they come along very timid, nervous, don't use their voice very strongly, and then after a period of time you can see the confidence building up. And that's part of why I was sort of trying to make the point of when you go and join a group of something that you love doing, but you get benefit from it. One, your own personal growth. And as you pointed out there about that really good sense of helping others. The thing that's really I found is that it's benefited outside of both the social support and the Toastmaster club sort of thing, is that for many years Toastmasters gave me the opportunity to be a bit more rational about some of the choices I needed to make, and having a job was one of those because having lost all our money at the end of the 90s in a business, work was very important. But at the time I had to work in a fluoro shirt and steel cap boots and ever so long natural blonde hair in a ponytail.
I'm sure you looked lovely all the same.
I didn't explain myself at work, but it turns out they'd seen me on TV, they'd knew a hell of a lot about me, but they protected me. If anyone from outside the organisation, it was a warehouse, so you had a whole range of people come in, they would say, don't, just take it carefully. They're a valued member of the staff and sort of protected me. And that was the value of developing a confidence in a whole range of people without necessarily explaining yourself.
Having a support network is extremely important. Toastmasters is built in that way, that everyone is supported and should be supported. And a lot of times I think in our communities we don't get the correct support, or we don't seek out the correct support maybe. And it's definitely there in Toastmasters if we look for it. Mentorship, the way the whole system, the leadership side of things is designed, it's there to be used as empowering new leaders coming through and building that chain of empowerment.
What I was sort of saying about with the work environment, it did surprise me because for many years I'm surprised that no one ever asked me to put the question to me, because I talked about all the things I did, but without actually saying, look, I go to this organisation wearing a dress or, with makeup. It turned out right from the managing director all the way down to the lowest of the staff, which was where I was at in the warehouse. They all were very supportive because they're more worried about your behaviour than how you look. Do you make an effort to do the job? And that's what I'm sort of feel inclusion in all sorts of organisations is very important, because when you meet people face to face, as we've been talking about, it's amazing how your own attitude changes, but you find that people react to you better than trying to deal with everything via a computer screen.
Absolutely, and I've always found your work ethic very good, Greer, and always enjoyed working with you. So, and I hope that'll continue.
Oh, I'm sure it will. Doing the judging at competition time was to, as we know, within the club structure, we need to have judges come along so we could run the club competition, and we'd get a request and they'd say, oh, Greer will come along, and I'd turn up. And and you'd see sometimes the odd look from particularly much older members, but after a short period of time, they understood that it's because I look different and in this position, they started to value what I contributed and the ability that I had, both as a judge and as a chief judge.
Absolutely.
And in the end, all those other concerns just melted into the background. Do you find that sort of with yourself as well when you?
Definitely. Once people know me for what I do and who I am, the problem with the androgynous side of things isn't a problem anymore. And I think it's about actually realising that that's only a very small part of who you are, and the rest of who you are is quite valuable.
Where I find with the social support side of things is when I'm talking to people is don't be afraid to go along to that group that you want to be involved in,
Sure.
Stamp collecting, whatever. It's important to live the life, basically. And of course, the more you do it, by osmosis, in a sense, people learn about you as a person, maybe an empathy for the challenges that you face. Do you find the confidence that you've developed by being in Toastmasters is translated to the way your supervisors deal with you, the people that you deal with in doing your research?
I think personally, obviously, it translates into every part of your life and your career. Your personal growth is one of those things that just does throughout every aspect of your life. Dealing with different sorts of people, that's kind of their stuff. So if they're thinking that judging you, then that's their... I don't find that at university at all. I've really very rarely found any judgment about being androgynous at university. The university setting is very accepting of that sort of diversity and a lot of diversity, really, cultural diversity. So not at university mainly. No.
Yeah. Just while you were sort of saying that, it reminded me of I'd been a member of another club many years ago as a start-up member, and one person who joined some months after I was there had come from another country and was really worried about how people would accept them, and that apparently they stood out. This is several years afterwards, recounting how Toastmasters made a difference to them. Stood outside the venue and was going, for about 20 minutes, humming and hawing, and I'm pent up, will people accept me? And then recounted the story of it. I finally got the courage to walk in and turned into the room, and there's Greer, and realised, because I was towering above everyone else, and that it is accepting. It does take that diversity, it does take that inclusion. Turned out to be a very valuable member of the club for many years until I moved interstate. Being inclusive and seeing that people accepted the diversity made the difference to that person. I feel in social support in particular is to just get out and try the face-to-face.
I think the more you do it, the easier it becomes.
Yeah.
I think being comfortable in your own skin is really important.
Yeah.
So however you find being comfortable, practice makes you more makes you more perfect. I think it does, makes you more comfortable in your own skin.
And I think on that note, Jules, being more comfortable in your own skin, because that's what inclusion's about. It's to allow people to feel that comfort in their own skin. I'd like to thank you for joining me in the conversation tonight, and look forward to catching up with you through Toastmasters, but maybe in other circumstances as well. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so much for including me today. Thank you, Greer.
I'm Greer McGearey. Thank you for watching Bent TV. My guest has been Juls Davey.